Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Helt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Hey, welcome back to the podcast. This week, my guest is Mikkel Thorup, and he is the founder and CEO of Expat Money, which is a leading private consulting firm helping high net worth individuals legally reduce tax liabilities, secure second residences or citizenships, and build robust international investment portfolios. Welcome.
Hi, Gary. Thanks very much for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Should be a fun one today.
Great. Mikkel, give us your background.
Sure. So for my background, I got to go pretty far back in time, and it's probably a not traditional background, especially on a professional show like yours. But I think it is important, and I think it will give a little bit of context. So when I was a child, I was actually diagnosed with a learning disability, and what happened was my teacher pulled me out of class one day. I was in grade 3, and they pulled me out of class, and they sat me down in a little room and said, Mikkel, something doesn't work quite right in your brain. And what we want to do is send you to a special school for special boys. And that's what they did, Gary. For 3 years, I took a little white bus and I went across town to some quote unquote special school. Only problem was it was actually not a special school. It was a regular school with a special class. So you can imagine what happened. I got in a lot of fights, got picked on, got bullied, and it was not a lot of fun. Now, this is no woe is me, poor Mikkel story. Certainly not. I mean, I got hit and I hit back twice as hard if I could, so I would never claim otherwise. But I went to this special class for 3 years. And eventually I got to go back to my neighborhood school. And I thought, this is going to be amazing. I'm so excited. All my friends will be missing me and wondering what happened to me. And day one of school, you can probably once again imagine what happened. Everybody started gossiping and whispering. And I remember Mikkel, he went to some retard school.
Right.
Thanks, guys. Very, very, very politically correct, very sensitive. You know how children can be.
Right.
But it left a very bad taste in my mouth for public education. And so I stopped going. And when I stopped going, then I ended up failing. And eventually I just left. So at 12 years old, I stopped going to school. At 15, I officially dropped out and I started traveling internationally not shortly after that. And when I started traveling internationally and visiting all these places and meeting all these people, I really realized that two main things, that there is more than one ways to learn things. And by the way, my quote unquote learning disability is dyslexia. I guess, early 80s, that was some horrible thing, but now we know in 2020s that it's actually not a big deal and actually very easy to overcome with the right training and everything. So that was the first thing that I learned, is many different ways of learning. And second was that there are so many people out there doing creative things and non-traditional ways. So you don't have to have the white picket fence and the, 2.5 kids and work a normal 9-to-5 job. So fast forward to today, and I have been traveling for 25 years straight. I've traveled to 120 countries. I've lived in 9. My wife and I own real estate in 10 different countries, and I run a 7, pretty much 8-figure consulting firm helping people to move offshore and invest internationally. So I really took a passion and something that I started to see as a teenager, and now in my 40s have built a rather good-sized business around these topics. And I'm happy to kind of take the conversation in whatever direction you like. But the main thing to understand, I guess, from this is that the work that I do, you can't go to university for. There is no expat, master's program or something like that. There's no bachelor's degree that does the type of work that I do. Everything has been me learning it and experiencing it and working with different professionals along the way.
So in your travels, that you've done, because like you said, I think you said you have visited 120 different countries. I think you said now you're in Canada now.
No, I was born in Canada. I live
Okay.
in Panama. We've been here for about 6 years. I left Canada in 2000, so 25 years
So,
ago.
so what made you decide Panama was the place that you wanted to settle?
So I was living in the Middle East. I was living in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. I was there for almost a decade, and I wanted to be in a country. There was a few reasons. One of them is I wanted to be in a food, water, and energy independent country. I wanted to be somewhere that was back on Eastern time or Central time. My first child, my daughter, was very young at that time. I wanted her to learn a third language. She already spoke English and Mandarin Chinese. My wife's from China. So we were looking, okay, should it be Arabic? Should it be something else? So we kind of put that all together, and then we were deciding, okay, Panama's food, water, energy independent. It's on Eastern Standard Time, Spanish-speaking country, beautiful, well-connected, still tax-free, which I very much appreciate about the UAE. And Panama just one by one floated to the top of our short list. And yeah, we've been here since 2019, and I really like it. It's really, really great place.
That's pretty cool. Um, you wrote a book titled Expat Secrets: How to Pay Zero Taxes. Tell us what the inspiration behind that book was.
So I had been trying different types of strategies from a very young age, and I really saw that being able to reinvest in myself or the business or even trips and travel was a much better use of a lot of the resources than going to, build the roads, as they say, with the tax, right? Um, I'm also very, very not a fan of war, especially after living in the Middle East for many years and
Mm.
seeing people from Syria and all these types of places and regular people trying to get along. So I really didn't like tax dollars going towards military spending or anything like that. So I really think that the individual, the free market can decide a lot better where money should be able to go. I still give to charity. I still help society. I still drive the economy through economics, but I'd rather do it opposed to giving my money to somebody else so that they can make the decision on what to do. So a lot of our work, we do legal tax planning. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a CPA like you, and I'm not a lawyer, but I do have lawyers that work for me. We're a 30-person team, and I have all the professionals in-house or partners with other lawyers. So we do everything by the book. We do it all legally, but definitely the genesis was a disdain for tax.
So I guess to talk a little bit more about the book, though. Understanding that, hey, don't want to pay a lot of taxes to people that I don't have control over where the spending's going and so forth. Um, but I guess tell us what I guess the mission and everything is behind Expat Money and your book, How to Pay Zero Taxes.
Sure. Do you want more of the strategies that we're actually using to pay zero taxes, or you
Yeah,
want
yeah.
more of,
Throw some of those out for our listeners to get a little bit of better understanding, so then that way we can talk to them about getting your book and what they will get out of
amazing? Perfect. So the first thing that people need to understand is that there's two main ways that people are taxed in the world, right? There's the United States, which tax based on physical presence, residency, and citizenship. The citizenship piece is very unique around the world. There's only two countries in the world that tax based on citizenship. There's Eritrea, which is a small African country, which is known for blatant human rights violations, and then there is the United States. Every other country does not tax based on citizenship. They're going to tax on your physical presence or your residency. Okay. So, as a Canadian, I can leave Canada. I can break up from CRA. I can pay my final tax bill and leave. And then I don't have to pay tax legally by living everywhere else in the world. That's not that's not possible as an American. So what we have for the Americans instead is there's a program by the IRS called the FEIE, the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion. And what it does is allows you to exclude a certain amount of your earned income from your taxes. You still have to file your taxes, but you don't have to pay taxes on that first 130 some odd $1,000. Okay. Now there's a couple of qualifiers that go into that. One is called the physical presence test. The other is called the bona fide residency test. So the physical presence test is 330 days in a foreign country. This one we usually do for year one because it's very objective. It's math. You are either physically in a foreign country for 330 days or you're not, right? Now, this is not jet setting around the world, international flights, on a cruise, yachting, sailing, because in any of those instances, you're in international waters, okay? You actually have to be in a sovereign nation because some people, they get it wrong. They say, okay, 330, there's 365 days. That means I can be in the United States for 35 days a year. No, not really, because you need to fly to the US and that will, maybe you're not in the US, but you're flying while you're in international waters. Okay. Year two onwards, it's a little bit more subjective. So then we're doing what's called the bona fide residency test, which is more like, where is your permanent residency? Where is your tax home? Do you have a bank account? Do you have a vehicle? Are you spending time there? All of these types of things. So this comes down to more about changing your facts and having a story, a case, right? But you've already been accepted in year one under the physical presence test. So now we're just continuing it on. So it's very easy to get accepted if it's done correctly. And we know the correct way to apply for all these things. But what this allows you to do, Gary, is spend a little bit more time in the United States every day. So instead of, like we were talking around 35 days, maybe it's 50 days, maybe it's 75 days. I mean, it's a little bit more subjective. Now, when you're going through it, I still don't recommend going back and having shareholder meetings or board meetings. I don't recommend signing corporate documents or anything like that. But if you want to go back for Christmas and see your mom and dad, or go to a wedding, or go to Disneyland with the kids, awesome. Shouldn't have any problem with those types of things. But I wouldn't be going back and doing business. So to kind of bring this full circle, what this allows you to do is move overseas. And although you are still legally required to file taxes on your worldwide income, you're going to be able to exclude the first roughly 130,000 some odd dollars. Now, the cool thing, Gary, is it's actually there's a doubling effect if you're married and your spouse is also a U.S. tax person. So now you're talking over $250,000 of earned income, which you're not paying taxes on. So that is a strategy that we're using as an expat to get Americans outside of having to pay a lot of excess taxes. Make sense?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think you helped clarify a few things for me on that because I've seen, the foreign income exclusion and stuff, and lots of times that the amount of time that first year that you have to spend outside, never thought about the travel or being in international water or whatever. I think that definitely helps clear that up for me, and understanding that piece a little bit more. Earlier, before we came on, you and I were kind of talking about a few things, and one of them that you were talking about was if someone's bank account gets frozen and possibly having some accounts offshore. Can you talk about that a little bit and kind of what those regulations are?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of our work is called Plan B, an economic plan B, setting up some type of a backup plan overseas. So the main things that are going into that is a bank account. So having an offshore bank account in another foreign jurisdiction where the US or Canada banking regulations and government cannot get access to it is very good. So what we were chatting about before, as I said, I was Canadian, the trucker convoy. So there was protests in Canada outside of Ottawa or in Ottawa, and the government didn't like what was going on with the protests. So they did an emergencies act and they froze all these people's bank accounts. They were literally going around and they were doing identification of vehicles, and anybody who was there, they were freezing bank accounts. Or if you donated, then you were having your bank account frozen. So there's all these stories in Canada of, single mother not being able to pay her electricity bill in the middle of winter in Canada and can't heat her home because she, gave $20 or something to the trucker convoys because she supported the protesters. Okay. So having a bank account overseas with a debit card and credit card and things like that, the Canadian government would never be able to freeze something like that. We can also say having money overseas, and then I mean there's many options. It doesn't have to be a dark path like we just described there, but it can even be traveling. It can be different currencies. There can be investment opportunities that you can get access to internationally. You can even take an example. Um, okay, say you and I decided we wanted to go in on business together. All right. And well, I'm a Canadian, you're an American. Well, we could set up the business in the US, but that might be a little bit difficult for me. I live in Panama, and if there's a dispute between us, then that might be a little bit hard. Well, we could do it in Canada, but then it's just the same situation reversed.
Right.
But what if you and I created a company together and it was based out of Nevis or BVI or something like that, and we had our banking there? And we had a dispute. Well, we can go through arbitration or the court system in a neutral country, which does not favor either one of our nationalities. Now we have very similar nationalities; they're almost the same. But imagine that you're doing business with someone in Japan, right? Let's take this one step further. You're doing business with someone in Japan, and now you're starting a business with them, and the business is registered, all the banking, everything, the courts is all in Japanese in Japan, and that's a really long ways to go over there. I've been there many times. Beautiful country, but I don't speak Japanese. I wouldn't know how to go through the court system. I don't understand
Right.
their legal system or their banking or anything like that. But once again, you could pick somewhere in between that gives you both even footing. So offshore banking, offshore incorporation, these types of things can help with many different types of situations.
With looking at it from if I were to leave the US, take up residency in another country, but I have money in the stock market, or I have retirement accounts and other stuff that's still here in the US, is that something I'm still going to have to pay US taxes on, or is that something that I'm able to kind of take with me and not have to worry about that because of my residency elsewhere?
No, so you'll still be responsible for paying US taxes. So going back to the FEIE, which I described earlier, that's for earned income. But we can
Okay.
take a couple of scenarios. So let's take what you said, but take it a step further. All right. You have a trading account, but you're not just a passive trader, you're an active trader and you trade daily. And this is what you do for a living. And you trade for more than 4 or 5 hours a day. And you spend a lot of time researching. Well, then I would make the argument that we could set up an offshore incorporation, and this is your main activity, and you would get classified as a professional investor, and then we could pull out a salary from that company that would be somewhat similar to the FEIE. So we do the same type of things with real estate investors. We have some really amazing, skilled, dedicated real estate investors, but passive income does not qualify you under the FEIE, but active does. So if you are able to draw a salary and we get you classified as a professional real estate investor, which is a classification, then we should be able to do all these things. And once again, I have the CPA and the lawyer sign off on all of these things, but those are some of it. But no, you can't just move overseas and get dividend distributions or capital gains or things like that and say, "Hey, I'm not in the country. I don't have to pay this anymore." That's not how it works. And there's no just structuring things overseas and not declaring it. You have to declare everything. Like if we go back to what I said, it's not that you don't have to declare. You have to declare. You tell them everything, but there are exemptions for certain amounts.
What about if someone here, you just use me as example, I decide that, hey, I want to buy a rental property in Costa Rica or some other place. Is that something that I would be able to make exempt from US taxes, or is that something that, no, I still need to report it, or how would that work?
So let's say that you do a real estate property in Costa Rica and you're generating income. So,
Mhm.
okay, let's even take one further step back. You purchase a property in Costa Rica in your own name. Do you
Right.
need to declare the property? No, you don't need to declare the property because it's held within your own name. There's three things that you don't need to declare to the Treasury Department: real estate held in your own name, assets held in a foreign spouse's name, or assets held in a safety deposit box where you have the key. Okay. Any of these things, you don't need to declare them to the Treasury. Okay. Now, you sell the property in a year from now and you make $100,000. Do you need to declare it? Yes, you do. That's capital gains. You have a legal obligation to tell the US government you made this $100,000, and then you do tax planning and pay your taxes on that. You rent out the property on Airbnb. Do you have to pay income tax on that? Yes, you do. You still have to pay income tax on it. It's you're receiving the money, whether you hold it offshore or you remit it back to the United States, you still have to pay taxes. The example that I gave before would be it's not one property, but it's a multitude of properties,
Mhm.
and that you're doing it professionally and you have a business and a business license to be able to do this, and you're drawing a salary. You would still declare the salary, but you would get the exemption. Make sense?
Yep, yep. So obviously this could become a very slippery slope for somebody who's trying to navigate this on their own. So this is definitely something that they need to find a professional like you to help them through this. As we were talking earlier, I don't do anything with international tax or anything else. That's just, I mean, again, it's a specialty. You do a lot with this. If somebody was thinking about starting to look outside the US for these type of investments, or even thinking about, hey, maybe I do want to move out of the country because I don't like the way that things are going, or whatever their reason is. Besides reading your book first, what else do you think what other advice would you have for them to get started?
So one of the main things that I'd be looking for in a country is one that is a lot more tax favorable. Because remember, everything we've been talking about so far is your obligations back to the United States,
Right.
right? But when you move to a new country, you now have obligations to that country as well. So I would try to find a country which has very low tax or zero tax. I'll give you a couple of examples. So there is a tax program, many countries have it, around 40 countries in the world, which is called a territorial tax system. Okay. So their entire government, their entire tax department is based on territorial. So what does this mean? It means that if the money is generated outside of the country, then they do not tax you inside the country. So this is deemed foreign sourced income. So let's take the Costa Rica example. Okay. Costa Rica, you live in Costa Rica. We're going to put the U.S. side, put U.S. piece aside for a second. Okay. Just talking about the Costa Rica. You live in Costa Rica full time. You are a tax resident of Costa Rica. You're living there for 183 days, but you're a US CPA and you do consultations on Zoom. And although you're sitting on the beach with the laptop, you're making your money on the internet. And the clients are not Costa Ricans. They're somewhere
Right.
else in the world. Do you owe taxes to Costa Rica? No, you don't. It's deemed foreign sourced income, and it's very, very set that you don't owe taxes there. Different scenario, you tend bar in Costa Rica and you're slinging drinks and you're serving people. Do you owe taxes there? Yes, absolutely, you do. That's deemed locally sourced income. Okay, so you're going to pay taxes on all your locally sourced, but not on your foreign sourced. So this works really well for any type of online business, coach, consultant, Amazon, FBA, drop shipper, work for a foreign company, freelancer, any type of online type of activity, or even investment or stock trading or real estate investing outside of the country, then there's often no taxes in the country. And so a couple of example countries is Belize, Panama, Costa Rica, we said, Paraguay, Georgia in Eastern Europe. There's a number of countries. Most of the Caribbean kind of falls within these territorial tax countries. I like Panama because it's what I consider a real country. We're fully food, water, and energy independent. Millions of people live here. We got lots of goods and services. I can live here full time and pay zero taxes in the Caribbean, in a country with 35,000 people where everything is imported and you're eating spam and stuff like that. I'm not sure I would go to that length to reduce the taxes. I think that there's better options. But like Panama, our tax code for the territorial is at the constitutional level. So it's not some thing that an administration is going to come in and just change tomorrow. Our territorial tax status is at the constitutional level. The strongest laws we have in humanity are at that level of government. So, because people are always asking me, like, well, what happens if I move there? And in a year, they're just going to change it. It's like, no, this entire country is built on being an offshore country. This is why Panama exists. This is why a lot of Caribbean countries exist, or Jersey, Guernsey, Sark, Isle of Man in the UK, or Luxembourg and Liechtenstein for Germany, or Andorra for Spain. These are the release valves for people with money. That's why we have all these offshore jurisdictions.
Wow. That's again, that there are so many complexities to it, and not knowing this, I could see where somebody could really make a huge mistake in what they think is going on. First, where can people find your book?
So if you go on Amazon, you'll find the book Expat Secrets. Expat Secrets: How to Pay Zero Taxes, sorry, Expat Secrets: How to Make Giant. I'm dying here. I wrote the
Expat
book 8 years
Secrets:
ago,
How to
Gary.
Pay Zero Taxes.
Zero taxes, live overseas. Yeah.
Yep. Um, there it is. Pay zero taxes, live overseas, and make a giant pile of money. An expat's guide to moving to Mexico.
To Mexico. It's funny because I haven't had anybody ask me about the book in so many years, because it's like since 2017 the book came
Right.
out. So it's kind of funny. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go on Amazon and pick up the book. It's Expat Secrets. It came out a while ago, but it's a lot of really good content in there. I definitely also suggest people check out our podcast. We've been going for about 9 years at the Expat Money Show. So if you look anywhere on your favorite podcasting app, you'll be able to find that. And then visit our website, join our newsletter at expatmoney.com. We are doing 3 days a week. We do blog articles. We have daily email correspondence through the newsletter. We've got monthly webinars. We've got quarterly trips. We've got annual conferences with thousands of people online who attend, and hundreds of people who attend in person. So a lot of work that we're doing at expatmoney.com.
That's great. What have I not asked you you wish I had?
Well, we didn't get a chance to talk at all about immigration. And I think immigration is actually one of the most important pieces, because it all kind of hinges on that. Like we were talking about the foreign earned income exclusion. That does not work if you cannot become a legal resident of a foreign country. So what we're trying to do is get you a permanent residency or a second citizenship to be able to move to those countries. And there's many different ways of going about that. We talk about it all the time on the newsletter and in the podcast and things like that. Many different government approved programs. Some require investing, some others require time on ground. It's a kind of a mix, but we specialize in a lot of these different immigration programs.
Great. All right, Mikkel, give everybody your website. We got your podcast and stuff like that, but if they want to go to your website and reach out to you, how can they do that? What's the best way?
Yeah, 100%. If you go to expatmoney.com, EXPAT money.com, you'll be able to find the Contact Us or the Work With Us button. And you can also join the newsletter there. And there's a ton of free resources for everybody to help them through their own journey.
Great. Mikkel, I really appreciate your time today. I know I've learned a lot, and I'm sure that our listeners have gotten a lot out of this. And I'm sure you're going to be hearing from a few of them.
Amazing. Very, very happy, Gary. Thanks for the opportunity. And if I can help your audience, of course, I'm here to do so.
Great. Hey, this week my guest was Mikkel Thorup, and he is the founder and CEO of Expat Money. I'll see you guys next week.